In today's video, we're taking a look at an Xbox Series X. I paid a grand total of £210 for this Xbox. And even though it's faulty, I don't think that's a bad price. And in today's video, hopefully we're going to be able to fix it and sell it for a profit. Now, I don't actually know if I'm going to be able to fix these because this is only my second one that I've purchased. And the eBay listing states, Xbox Series X console, UK faulty, turns itself off. Good use condition, just dirty and need to clean. Was working fine and randomly started turning itself off. I can't fix it myself, but I'm sure someone can. I don't think I'm the person for the job, but I'll give it my best shot. The fact that this thing has the original box makes me very happy. And here it is. We don't have a power supply or anything with it, unfortunately. I think the condition is actually okay. I've always wanted an Xbox fridge. We can see in the crevices here that lie beneath, it seems to be quite dusty. This is the disk drive, so we'll give it a quick little dusting, but the top is looking pretty clean, which is where the big fan is. First things first, as always, let's get it plugged into HDMI and power and see if it works like it says in the listing. And do we get anything on the screen? We get power, you can see it lights up. That's really, really good. We heard the boop boop. It just turned off, just like that. So power on. Wait for it. Power off. Okay, let me count how many seconds that is. About 7 seconds. And just in case you're wondering, we also get no output on the screen whatsoever. And unfortunately, we have no disc. From the little bit of research that I've done with regards to Xbox Series X's, channels like Go Gamers or The Coder, Phil, they give great explanations as to what it might be if it's a beep on, a beep off. It could be that we have a storage problem with the SSD. And the way to check this is if we plug in the power, very much like the Xbox One S and other Xbox consoles, if you hold down the sync, eject, and power button at the same time and hold, it should boot into safe mode if it's an SSD issue. So I've just done that and the console has stayed on. I don't believe it. Is it an SSD then? Do we get an image? We get an image, but it's just turned off. Let's go back into safe mode. So holding it down again. There's the extra beep. And I get a display, right? Any second. Yeah, I do. But it turns back off. Okay, now with this newfound information that I can get into safe mode, I'm going to go ahead and assume one of two things. It still might be a power issue with the Xbox, which is causing it to shut down before it turns on. But the fact that it's getting further to safe mode, I think it might be an issue with the SSD. Because I can boot to safe mode, something's happening on the SSD, but then it's shutting off. So it still could be a power issue. This is all a guess theory from me, by the way. I've only worked on one of these consoles before, so I don't really have a clue what I'm doing. What I do know is that on Xbox One S consoles and normal Xbox consoles, if you plug in OSU 1 and hold down the same sequence but wait for a third beep, it should then attempt to copy straight from the USB onto the storage. If we have faulty software on the storage, maybe, just maybe, it might overwrite it with OSU 1 a fresh image. Let's try that. If it doesn't work, I think in my head I've already planned next steps, but we'll come to that in a second. So I'll just plug in the USB at the front down here, switch over to our game scene. Now, let's test. So I'm going to hold down again. Again, we get power. There we go, fan spin. That was 2 beeps. That's the third beep. I'm coming off. Do we get anything on the screen? And if so, what does it do? Ooh, okay, I didn't like that. And now what I'm gonna do is see if I can turn the console back on safe mode, see if I've done anything to that SSD. There it is, I come off. Does it go back to that same screen? Yes, it does, but it looks messed up and it's just turned off again. I may need to purchase an M.2 enclosure that I can plug in to my PC to check the health of the SSD in this console. But I'm also going to take this apart now and just have a look at the SSD and the motherboards, because there's 2 boards on this, to see if there's anything that's jumping out at me as to why it's not working. I believe we warm up this sticker to unveil a secret screw under here. There we go, I believe this is T10, might be T9 to be fair. Being honest with you, on first inspection, it doesn't look that bad. It is a little bit dusty inside here, under where the heatsink is, but other than that, it's the condition looks okay. It doesn't look like it's been taken apart before, I don't think. I am now down to the engine of the Xbox, and it looks, again, okay. This little board at the front here seems fine. No visible water damage, marks or anything like that. Again, overall, just a little bit dusty. So I'm going to take it down to the next level and then we're going to have a look at the actual board itself and maybe a quick look at the ports. Right, if I'm being completely transparent and honest, I've got the HDMI board here, which is the fault that I've done previously. I fixed the HDMI port. This is also the heatsink, so this is the big block. I know for a fact that the SSD is under here, under this little shield. And then we've got the top board, which connects onto this one, basically. This big ribbon cable feeds through here and then it plugs into this board, which I'm assuming then gives this board power. I know that we've got the APU under here, but what I don't know is where to start. I don't know the best place to inject power on this. I'm thinking maybe just put 12 volts onto the power connector here and start testing to see if there's any issues with any voltage on the board. Or I could just take my multimeter and start poking around and visually check for any liquid damage or something that might indicate a short. I think I might do that first, but what I also do want to do is the Coda has an M.2 cloning machine, which is the storage for this device. I'm thinking of picking it up because it will be handy if I ever work on any Xbox Series X's again. And all I've got running through my head at the moment is that the SSD is bad. At least I keep telling myself that. Let's just visually quickly inspect the SSD. Let's head on over to the scope and see if we've got any visual issues with this SSD. I bet there's people out there at the moment that are like, no, Joey, stop it. Like, this is such an obvious fault. Why are you checking the SSD? Visually, it looks fine. I mean, there's some gunk here, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume that that is because of the blue tack that was keeping this cool. But visually, it doesn't look like we have any issues. Does that just wipe off? Yeah, it does, yeah. No marks, nothing like that. And my only real way to know if this is faulty is to buy an M.2 reader. I was just gonna say, I didn't know if it was SATA or NVMe, but it's an NVMe, Western Digital 1 terabyte. All right, in my opinion, this looks okay. Okay, hear me out for a second. This is an Xbox Series S. I'm gonna try and use the SSD from this on the Xbox Series X. I don't know if it's compatible, I have no idea, but it's worth a try. It's probably not going to work, in which case I don't know if I can just wipe this, buy a clone machine, and then clone the other SSD to this one to see if that works. Let's give it a go. Okay, I think I've got everything plugged in as I need it, I think. Let's see what happens. Okay. Oh. I get no power at all. And I've got the power supply plugged in to the boards. They're all connected. This is for disk drive, so I don't think it needs to be plugged in. So why don't you turn it on? Okay, so first things first, am I getting 12 volts on the board itself on this pin? I am. I'm getting 11.79. So I'm getting voltage to the board, and annoyingly I can't see if I've got voltage to the other board because of the way it's sandwiched together. I also get 3.3 in another random location. I think this is a test point, but that's a test point for ground. Is there any other test points on here? Well, this little transistor, 3.3 as well. Let's see if I'm getting 12 volts on this connector here. If I just put my probe down here, I am. So 12 volts is going to the bottom board as well. There's no reason why I shouldn't power on, right? Okay, let's see if it powers on now. Still nothing. I think I'm being really dumb somehow. All right, I've put it back together and I'm getting a beep and it still just turns straight back off. At least I haven't broken it. To be clear, this is with the SSD for the Xbox Series S, so not this console. So I think that's why it might just be turning straight off. I reckon I was putting this power board in the wrong way. Yeah, I was. Because it turns on now. Amazing. Just as an FYI. Not that you guys need proof that I'm an actual moron. However, I was putting the cable in this way on the board. Turns out the ribbon cable needs to go upwards. I've put the original SSD back in. I just want to see if it stays on for a bit longer now. So I put that together, press the power button. There we go, we get the beep. How long does it stay on for? A lot longer than the Series S SSD, that's for sure. But I wonder if it just powers off. It just powers off. I'm still convinced that this is an SSD issue, and I'm saying that because we get an image on the screen. I've just ordered a Salent M.2 clone machine. Shout out to the coder, Phil. I watched one of his videos on an Xbox Series X, and it looks like a great tool to clone the SSD. Not just that, but I can then put this M.2 SSD from the Series X into the enclosure, and I'll be able to see on my PC whether or not it's a good or bad drive. I guess the cloning ability is just a bonus. I'll continue this video as soon as I get that Salent clone copier, and it should be around now. It has arrived. The Sabrent USB Type-C dual enclosure for PCIe NVMe M.2 SSDs. Try and say that 10 times in a row. The first thing I'm going to try with this is put in the M.2 SSD that I've got for the Series S to show that it's a good drive, and then I'm going to do the same with the Xbox Series X, and hopefully we're going to be able to tell the difference. In the box you have a power adapter, guessing it ships with EU. So you just unplug that and then you can put the UK one on. That's pretty handy. I believe these are like standoffs for when you put the M.2s in the casing. You put these in to secure them or something. I don't know, we're about to find out. Interestingly enough, it does say the source drive has to be of equal or smaller size than the target drive. An example of this is if your source drive, the one you want to clone, has 256 gigabyte of storage, your target drive should be at least 256 gig. Good to know. The instruction manual also stresses don't use this without having it plugged into power. We do have a USB-A to USB-C cable and a USB-C to USB-C. So I'm guessing all we should have to do is plug in USB-C here. Nice. It's really weighty as well. It has a good weight to it. And that's what it basically looks like inside. There's letters on it to say A and B. And for the meantime, all I want to do is plug this in. Now, unfortunately as well, I'm pretty sure that we don't have a standoff for how small this one is. So I think it was actually Tronics Fix who just cut some foam. So I'm gonna do that now. We're then just gonna double it over, push it down like that, like nothing ever happened. If you're interested in this little cloning device, I'll leave a link in the description down below. It'll be an affiliated link, meaning I get a kickback if you purchase one of these. Okay, here we go now. So we have Crystal Disk info. We've got my L, C and D drive. I haven't turned the SSD for the Xbox Series S on yet, not the Series X, the Series S. So I'm gonna do that right now. And we should get a, there it is, okay. You need to format the disk in drive K before you can use it. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that's because it's an Xbox Series S. There's some special type of format on the drive. I don't know, I'm very dumb when it comes to this stuff. That's what I'm gonna go ahead and assume because this boots. This SSD does boot on the Xbox Series S, it's fine. If we refresh Crystal Disk info, maybe not, rescan, we should see, there we go. K drive has popped up, 450 gig. I thought the SSD in the Xbox Series S was a terabyte. And I'm sure this is the total size because if I go to my D drive, it's a 2 terabyte hard drive. My C is a 256. That is strange. It's not actually strange at all. Editing Joey has found out that every single Xbox Series S actually has a 500 gigabyte SSD, not 1 terabyte. Now that we know that the Sabrent reader works, I'm going to unplug the Series S one and put the broken one, which I think is faulty, from the Series X into the Sabrent drive, and we'll see what it's reading. This is the Xbox Series X SSD that I've put in the Sabrent drive now. So again, just a bit of foam. Right, here we go. I'm going to press the on button. There it is. And we're waiting for the boop, boop, boop. I'm kind of hoping that it is broken, so now I definitely know that this is the issue. The moment of truth, we're going to rescan it and hopefully it's going to pop up. I mean, it's recognized by the PC, which is one thing. It says good. It's 100% good on the health status. So it shows that, I mean, it's fine. I look at this and I think that the drive is fine. I guess this one just got a lot more interesting. It also confirms 930 gig. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that the Xbox Series S1 is actually 500 gig, which is really shocking because I thought all Xbox Series S and that generation of console had at least 1 terabyte of storage. Let's try and dig a little bit deeper. I've come across what I think is an extremely useful video from the YouTube channel Go Gamers. Big shout out to him. I've just watched a 30-minute video of his explaining how the 2230 SSDs work in ways of their partition and what is married to the board for the Xbox Series X. I'll leave a link to this video if you're curious. I'm not going to repeat what he says because again it's 30 minutes worth of footage and he explains it very, very well. In a nutshell, I'm able to read the Xbox Series X SSD that I've put into my PC, and this where it says 1 gigabyte of raw data is what is needed if you're wanting to transfer from the original Xbox Series X SSD to another. What I'm going to do is create a backup of this 1 gigabyte raw partition, format the drive to NTFS, and then copy this back onto the drive and install OSU 1 on the Xbox Series X, if that makes any sense. Because I'm confusing myself right now. The only reason I'm doing this is because the SSD is reading as good in Crystal Disk info. And I'm hoping that all it is just corrupt software, and that I don't have to go and buy a £180 2230 NVMe SSD. Again, I could be doing all of this and there might be something else wrong with the console, nothing relating to the SSD, but I'm gonna give this a go. I did have about 5 minutes of footage of me showing you how this is done, but I've decided to just not include it because it's pretty boring. If you want to check it out, look at the Go Gamers video that I'll post in the description. Pretty sure I just put my Xbox Series X back together, put the SSD back in, put OSU 1 in on a memory stick, and we try again. Put in the SSD back into the Series X and screwing it down. I've left the back off the Xbox, but I have put some screws in. There is no way this works. If it does, I'll probably cry. Switching over to the game scene, and in goes OSU 1 as well. Around 3, 2, 1. Here we go. It hasn't turned straight back off, which is a result. It has just turned straight back off. Okay, we've got 3 beeps. I've let go. Do we get anything on screen? We do, but it's gone again. If I show you guys one more time, you can see the image is almost in a corrupt state. So I know that now that it's not software, but you'll see the green in a second. Just waiting for one more beep. There we go, the 3rd beep. You should see like green on the screen. You've seen it already before, but look, on the right hand side there's green. Could that potentially mean like a faulty retimer chip, or maybe just something in general wrong with the HDMI circuit? The Xbox doesn't like it and is therefore just turning straight back off. I think that's what I have to investigate next. And we're under the scope. I have done measurements on all of the resistors around the retimer chip. This is the retimer chip, by the way, and everything seems to be okay from what I can tell. There's no visible damage around here whatsoever, including on the HDMI port itself, but a green image on a screen very similar to like the Xbox One S consoles points me towards the retimer chip. Another thing that I can try, thanks to a Discord user called Exploit from the Coders Discord, is I can take the SSD out, and if the console stays on without the SSD in, we know it's the SSD that's at fault. Okay, I've taken out the SSD, which I have here. I've plugged all the stuff back into the console. Let's turn it on and see if we get anything. Or is it going to turn off straight away again? It's staying on. It's not shut off. Usually I wouldn't have it on for this long without booting into safe mode. Okay. Do we get anything on the screen? It's still on after about 30 seconds and I have nothing on the screen. I'm assuming because there's not an SSD. The good news is that we know it's an SSD issue. There's no SSD in here. When I turn it on, it stays on. That to me indicates that it's the SSD causing the corruption. Even though in Crystal Disk Info, it says that the drive is fine. A 1 terabyte 2230 NVMe SSD goes for around about 170 to 180 pounds. If you add that with how much I paid for the console, which was £210 for the console, you're looking at around 380, 390, 400 pounds in total to repair this console. Plus I spent 100 pounds on this Sabrent drive cloner. I think the sensible thing for me to do would be to put this to the side for the time being, and if I get any Xbox Series X's that I can't fix or that I can use for parts, to use the 1 terabyte SSD from that to get this console up and running, as I am already very far in the negative with this one. Gutted we couldn't fix it, however I've learned a lot with this video and I hope you have too. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one. Peace.